Hey, Peachtree, what an exciting year in ministry that we have before us. Because our hope and our aspiration is that we're learning how to dwell with God. We're learning how to pray together and to pray the words that people have used for centuries in order to come into a greater knowledge and relationship with God. The book of the Psalms has given voice to our prayers throughout the years. And Rich Villodas is going to help us to be able to discover what it means for us to dwell in God's presence. Enjoy this conversation. We are back to the Peachtree R&R show, and glad to be with you, Rich. And thanks for setting aside this time for us to get to talk.
It's been a joy to be with you.
Always enjoy our conversations, and hopefully by this point in the year, people can sense that maybe they're dwelling with God and God's dwelling with them, and they're residing in a whole different way than they were before. And if you've fallen off the wagon and stopped praying the daily dwell, it's never too late to get back on the opportunity and the train to keep going. So let's keep doing it together and get to the finish line. We're hoping that as we live in God's presence with the Psalms, that we become more amazed, more curious, more hopeful, more vulnerable, faithful, persevering, teachable, unifying, and this month, gracious or grace-filled. And that we are going to be more people of grace by healing the brokenness that's within us. Just the other day, I broke a glass in our kitchen, and it was a glass that I had bought at kind of a special sporting event that I was holding on to and loved to drink out of it, and it shattered. 1 minute it's there and it's fine, and the next minute it's gone.
Now, are you typically clumsy with stuff? Or
no, I am not, and I'm not even typically overly sentimental about things. But boy, when I was thinking about our time and talking about this, you feel like something's fine, and then it's shattered.
Yeah,
it's broken.
Yeah,
and yet God provides a way of healing for us. What do you think we need to do to become people of healing presence in today's world?
Talking about brokenness, I think begins with our own ability to see the degree of our own brokenness and our need for healing. I think to be a healing presence in the world means that we've tasted something first. My mind goes to Acts chapter 3. Peter and John arrive at this gate called Beautiful. There's this guy who's been begging for money for many, many years. And he extends his hand looking for a handout, and Peter says, silver and gold I do not have, but what I do have, I give you. In the name of Jesus, get up. I love in that passage, he can only give what he has. And I think the degree to which we recognize the depth of our brokenness, our need for healing and grace in our own lives, is the degree to which we can become a healing presence in the world for those who are broken around us. And so healing emerges. It's the paradox of the Christian life, isn't it? In order to be first, it needs to be last. Greatest will be least. Those who are whole are those who recognize the depth of their brokenness. And so I think it starts there.
As Henry Nouwen used to say, we are wounded healers.
Yeah.
Are we not?
Yeah.
One of my favorite details in that I discovered in a commentary I was reading about that Acts passage is, to the best of our abilities, that gate that was called Beautiful would have been adorned with silver and gold. So as a backdrop to silver and gold I don't have to give you, but I can give you the healing presence. Even though we live in a very medically advanced society, we are coming to terms with the fact that there are limitations to what the scientific method is going to be able to do to heal us. It was recent that we found that even though we're the most advanced society in the world, that our life expectancy was actually starting to go down, particularly because of our diseases of despair, our addictions, our habits, and the mental health or unhealth of our society means that we're not living as long as we used to, even though we have the capacity to keep people alive longer. And so the need for healing is greater, especially when we talk about healing our whole selves and our souls. As a pastor, how are you seeing healing in your own community?
We think about healing in a couple of ways in our church. One is kind of in the classic, our church, we wouldn't regard ourselves as a Pentecostal church, but we have some of that in our history. And so it is this recognition that God can touch and heal, restore, mend some aspect of our lives. And so we want to open ourselves up to moments like that in prayer, in intercession, on Sunday mornings when we gather together. So that's one way we think about healing. It's and another way of thinking about it is healing is the pathway towards integration, wholeness. There's so much that's compartmentalized, unintegrated in our lives. I know you're friends with John Ortberg. When we talk about the soul is like it's a fully integrated life where we are embracing all of the various parts of who we are into the healing journey. And so whether we're talking about our bodies, whether we're talking about our emotions, whether we're talking about our relationships, what does a healed person look like? A healed person is an integrated person. A person who says, every facet of my life needs to be touched by God. And I'm going to live by God's grace into that kind of coherence. And so for us, the healing journey is, we believe, could be a moment, like in a moment, like God's hand of grace extends in a moment of encounter. And it's this ongoing slow process of formation where we're becoming more integrated as human beings.
When I think about being the healing presence of Christ in a community, I can't help but thinking that confession is a part of it. That there's an awareness to our brokenness and our own need to be healed, but also beyond awareness to admission.
Mm-hmm.
That there's not just something fundamentally wrong in the world, there's something fundamentally wrong with me. And so when you think about the role of confession in community for individuals as well as for groups, how do we break through that barrier?
I think of confession in two ways. Confession of sin and confession of struggle. The psalm is escaping me. It says, when I didn't confess my sins, like my bones were out of joint. There's a connection in the Psalms around lack of confession and my body, my daily existence has been compromised now because I'm keeping something within. And so I do believe healing.
It's a haunting image, by the way.
Yeah,
just the idea of that.
It really is. Like my body cannot contain or what I'm keeping on the inside. Something has to be externalized. There's a valve that needs to be opened to release what I'm feeling in here, because otherwise I'm I'm crumbling on the inside. And so confession, the way we've talked about it in our churches, confession requires confession of sin, confession of struggle. There are certain things that we are habits we're caught in, cycles that are repeated. Whenever we find ourselves in distress, there's often a very sinful way of self-soothing that puts us into deeper troubles. And so confession of sin, I think, is important, the things that we've done or left undone that we must name. But I also think confession of struggle. Every year I lead a couple of retreats at our church, and at the start of the retreat, there's usually anywhere between, I'd say 50 to 80 people in the room. And I begin by saying, we're going to have an exercise of confession. And the people get very nervous at that point there. It's just like, well, I came to the wrong retreat.
I'm starting to sweat just thinking about it.
And when I talk about confession, I more so talk about in that context of struggle. And I offer 3 questions. I ask, what are you carrying? What does your soul need? And is there an image or metaphor you can give to help explain those first 2 questions? And I begin. I'm the one who models it first. And I talk about what I'm carrying as a husband, what I'm carrying as a pastor, what I'm carrying as a father, the weight that's just bringing me down, what does my soul need? In so doing, I'm confessing my desperate need for God or something happening in my life. And then I give an image. And those have been one of the most powerful moments, because then I say, okay, who would like to share next? And as everyone is sharing, this is what I'm carrying. And then naming it out loud. It's like whatever we can't name we're imprisoned to it.
Yeah.
And so to name it out loud, to confess it out loud is a way of saying, I refuse to be imprisoned by whatever this might be. And so for our witness as the church and to the world, and our witness between one another, and in the move towards wholeness, I think confession is indispensable in our life with God.
We believe that we are a people of grace because we have received grace.
Yeah.
And many of the warnings that we get at the lips of Jesus in the New Testament has to do with being willing to forgive in the same way that we were forgiven.
Yeah.
And last month we talked about, how difficult it is at times for us to be perceived as a people of integrity based on the witness of the church. I don't think people look at the church and say, you know what, those Christians are the most gracious, most forgiving people I've ever met. And it's laughable because it's true, and yet we ought to be marked by our forgiveness and our reconciling presence in the world. What can we do to move that needle? Like, how can we become people who are more of grace?
To talk about forgiveness for a second along those lines, I wonder what you think about this. I wonder in some Christian contexts if forgiveness is happening, but because it's not coming from a deep center, it's a very flimsy forgiveness, and so there is Matthew and Sheila Lynn, they wrote a book called Don't Forgive Too Soon. And their premise is that true forgiveness emerges when we allow ourselves to go through, in a very similar way, like the stages of grief, of denial and anger and bargaining and acceptance and whatever, all those 5 stages there. And what they say is most people forgive, Christians forgive, but they're not really forgiving. They're just being nice. They're just trying to be good Christians. But it's not coming from a deep center, which means it leaks out from time to time. And I wonder if part of looking at forgiveness for a moment, the harm that has been done to us, some of it needs to be grieved very deeply before we can really offer forgiveness. So I think that's part of the equation there. The other part of it is, to what degree have I been honest about my own sense of brokenness and sin and receiving grace from God? It's like the person who loves much, does so because much have been forgiven of their lives. I mean, this is one of the Jesus stories in the Gospels. And so I do think, on one end, recognizing the depth of God's grace towards us makes us more forgiving people. And I think there's something about the inward journey of grieving that moves us towards a more genuine, not flimsy understanding of what forgiveness is.
I love that. Yeah, not forgiving too quickly, and making sure that forgiveness truly comes from the core.
Yeah.
And I think because in a lot of regards, and you see this in Tim Keller's work on forgiveness, for the idea of forgiveness has kind of come under a lot of scrutiny because it's perceived as an unwillingness to engage with the hurts and the problems of the world. And so what is it going to mean for us to be able to say, I forgive you, and have it not be perceived as either just being nice, but I also think in this regard also just being Pollyannish, like you're naive, like you're not really dealing with the actual pain that exists. So how do we get to the forgiveness that's on the other side of that, not just the platitude forgiveness?
Yeah. And that's kind of the wholeness of healing, isn't it? Like coming back to healing, like healing is a integrated, a refusal to compartmentalize life very neatly. How do I feel the pain and not ignore it, and at the same time offer generous forgiveness, not in a way that is rooted in denial and falsehoods, but rooted in truth. This is what's happened, and I forgive you. I think that's what's needed, not a denial of the pain that's happened, but a forgiveness in light of it. And that's a life that's moving towards healing and grace.
Yeah. One of the privileges of being a pastor is you get a front row seat to people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where do you get to see healing? Where have you gotten to see it in your decades of ministry, physical or emotional healing?
I think one of the biggest, most beautiful areas of healing um, in my office at the church has been with people seeing God in a different light. I think it was Brennan Manning who said something along the lines of, Jesus came, and I'll paraphrase a little bit, to heal the false images of God we have in our minds. And so much of our own disintegration emerges to what we've talked about before, the vision of God we have in our heads. And so I think the healing, to know that goodness and mercy is what's following, but that's what's pursuing me all the days of my life, as opposed to God's looking to get me. So I've seen people, because of Jesus, say, I have a far better picture of what God is like, which has now had a reverberating impact in the ways that I relate to others. Not as judgmental as I used to be. My relationships have been restored because of what Christ has done in my view of God. So I think about that. I also, because of our work, we've done a lot of work on emotional health and relationships over the years at our church. My predecessor is the one who began that, and I've continued that over the last 12 years. And so I have had a front row view and seat to seeing relationships that were once marked by contempt, at one time marked by suspicion, hurt, transform into grace and curiosity and understanding, and forgiveness. As a pastor, seeing people reconciled and relationships healed, and seeing their relationship to God being healed because of Jesus, those are just a few of the beautiful testimonies of grace that I've been able to witness.
I was talking with needs to be careful as I say this out loud. I was talking with a divorce attorney recently, and that's the wrong preamble to something along these lines. And it was clearly not for my own sake, but it was just because they were a part of the community, ask them what they did, and they're a divorce attorney. And I'm rather nosy in this regards, and so I just asked, do you notice a difference between Christians and non-Christians in your practice? He said, not usually. Which broke my heart.
Yeah.
And then he said, but every once in a while, I will see some Christians who their marriage is broken and shattered into a million pieces, and it can't get put back together. But they divorce without any contempt. He said it's so remarkable to witness two people who can no longer live together but still love one another.
Wow.
In the sense of that, it's not the feelings, but that I want what's good for you, and I will not let go of that. Oftentimes when I do marriage counseling, I will tell somebody, can you actually figure out how to be a healing presence in the midst of this conflict? And not because you are able to engineer a certain response from them, a reaction from them, a certain outcome for your relationship, but because you are called to be that non-anxious healing presence of Christ with the person right now that it feels like it's an adversarial relationship. When you see it, it's something that's probably still pretty shocking.
Yeah. What a witness.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so this month, we hope that we will be a people marked by grace. And that as we pray, we offer these prayers and we say these words, that it's not just ritual, and it is not just offering of a variety of different phrases and catchphrases to God or sacred sayings, but that they actually help us to embody the healing and the forgiveness of what we have first received from on high. And so, Rich, thanks for being with us for this great discussion.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us on this podcast, a conversation where we're beginning to learn what it means to dwell in God's presence and for God to dwell with us. We hope that you will look for more information on our website at peachtreechurch.com/dwell for more information, to give us feedback, and to let us know that you're participating in a life with God in a whole new way.